I guess I was right all along. Alright, by now you already know the deal. We're going to be doing a deep dive breakdown. We're going to be getting all the Easter eggs and everything we can. So there's going to be major spoilers. If you haven't seen the episode, go check that out first. Come back here and check out everything we have. I hope y'all enjoy the video. If you do, leave a like. It really helps out the channel. Don't forget to go check out my videos if you want to get caught up on all my theories and everything. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So, episode 7. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the last sitcom themed episode that we're going to get. As far as I can tell, the next 2 episodes are just going to be in the real world, you know, Sword and Wanda and Photon and Agatha and probably Mephisto and everything else kind of coming together and all concluding in one big showdown. But you know, for the last sitcom, they had to treat us. They gave us one, you know, from the early 2000s, so it's themed with kind of a modern family and actually a real big office vibe. As a matter of fact, it even has a office themed intro. It's so great. I mean, The Office is one of my favorite shows of all time. I mean, I think it's pretty much everybody's. It's one of the most streamed on Netflix. But one of the biggest, most trademark things of sitcoms of that era was doing what I'm doing, talking to the camera, you know, giving their kind of 2 cents off to the side. And there is plenty of it in this episode. And it's actually through this that we get Wanda admitting just right off the bat to purposely expanding the border and that it's a world that she created. And it's pretty interesting because she says, you know, it's, you know, oh, we've all been through it. She acts as though it's like kind of a drunken blackout, you know, something that you kind of did and you kind of vaguely remember bits and pieces of it. And you wake up in the morning just with a headache like, oh man. Can't believe I'm going to have to deal with the consequences of, you know, whatever it was that I did last night. But so while she's waking up, you know, kind of reminiscing on this whole thing, the kids come up and they're saying, you know, hey mom, our game is totally freaking out. And this is when we get the first hint at the show is kind of trying to rewrite stuff back to the first episode. It's trying to restart it so that it can kind of go back to, well, at least what I think is that it's trying to get back to where, you know, things are good again and Sword isn't completely, you know, infiltrated and everything isn't, you know, completely out of whack anymore. And we know this because what they mean by our game is freaking out is their Wii controllers are actually turning from Wii controllers into game controllers and then into an Atari or kind of Pong joystick and then into Uno cards. But they kind of brush that off and then Billy, you know, he starts saying, hey mom, my head hurts. It's really noisy. You know, it seems like he's got a lot of stuff going on in there, you know, with his powers and he just doesn't know how to control it and kind of single stuff out. But it does end up coming into play later that, you know, everybody, you know, seems to kind of create a bunch of noise in his head. But this is when we find out that Wanda, you know, she's kind of just taking a day to herself. She's trying to basically just ignore the kids completely. And she walks downstairs. She decides, you know, I'm going to go get myself a bowl of cereal. And we see the milk is also trying to revert itself back. One thing that I did notice, though, is there's a small snippet where it's like an old milk carton with a missing picture on it. I couldn't really get a clear look at who it was, but it makes me think, you know, who could be that missing kid on the carton? Could be nothing, but I don't know. I'm just curious as to whether or not it's going to come into play later. But then we get that office-themed intro, and when it cuts back, we see that Vision wakes up. And the most interesting thing to me is I noticed last episode I was talking about, you know, the fact that there's a lot of eye imagery and the fact that I think it's a little weird that Vision, you know, has human eyes when all the times before they were clearly cyborg eyes. But in this episode, the very first time you see him, his cyborg eyes, they're back. They're not human eyes anymore. And me and my girlfriend, we were watching it and something just seemed a little bit off about his makeup in general. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something felt weird. But since he was at the border whenever he, you know, fell out and was dying, he's the first one to see Darcy Lewis and figure out, oh, okay, she's in the illusion. And, you know, he tries to go and kind of break her out and talk to her, but she's kind of gets the wrong idea and she's like, no, hard pass, and just decides to walk off from him and try to ignore him. But then we cut back to Wanda talking to the kids and she's like, you know, if your dad wants to stay out, he can. I can't control him, wanting to come home or not. And I think this kind of is a hint at the fact that she can't really physically control him, but it makes me wonder, is she the one who later is, causing impediments and, putting things in Vision's way to, keep him from getting home? Or is it someone else that we find out, is pulling a few strings later in the show? But another notable thing is she says, Pietro, he is not your uncle. And, she straight up tells the kids, I don't have a lot of the answers. I don't know exactly what's going on with him, why he's here, or who exactly he is. Then she starts to kind of break down and freak out, and almost seems like a quarantine is getting to her. And it's a bit too familiar. Then one of the most important characters in this episode, Agnes, shows up, and she's, trying to take the kids, give Wanda some alone time, allow her to kind of think and, take some time to herself. One thing I did notice during this scene is she's wearing purple, which is definitely some major foreshadowing for later in the episode. When she's gone and Wanda's alone, she starts to notice, things around the house are definitely starting to change and revert back, and, she can't really deny it anymore. She's like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. And she seems really worried because, she fixed it, but it all just happened completely out of her control. But then we finally find out what Project Cataract is. And basically, S.W.O.R.D. wasn't really decommissioning Vision at all. They were trying to bring him back online, but they couldn't until Wanda came along and stole the body. But that's why they were tracking Vision. They were trying to, they want their weapon back. But the question is, how did Wanda bring him back to life anyway? And how is the stone in his forehead? Logically, the stones are supposed to be destroyed from what we found out in Endgame. So, what is that, and how is it? Why can't he leave the Hex? I really think it's because he's not actually alive. But a little bit of a funny thing that I noticed here was the email that Wu opens up and it shows on screen is pretty much line for line the exact script of that little conversation between Wu and Rambo. And that's cool. I get, kind of high. I have my notes, but at least don't show it on screen, maybe. Anyway, so where Wu and Rambo are going is to meet up with kind of like a rogue company from S.W.O.R.D. It's all people that were specifically loyal to her and her mom. And this is where they reveal that rover thing that, they were talking about that she would need to get back in safely, they made it. And they brought it. It ends up being basically useless, but we'll get to that later. So we get back to inside the Hex and we find out that Darcy, she is completely under the spell. She's trying to just ignore Vision, just act like, everything's normal. She's, just kind of responding to everything with jokes, just like everybody has been this whole time. So Vision kind of, finds a distraction, wakes her up, and he's like, all right, look, we need to get the hell out of here. We need to figure out what's going on. I have a lot of questions. And she's like, well, I have answers. Let's go. So the guy from S.W.O.R.D. who was kind of a that wouldn't get her coffee in the episode that she was first revealed, he's, trying to stop her and was like, no, you need to be a part of the circus act. And she straight knocks him out. And it's pretty funny because, there's an old, cartoony sound effect. But then they steal Van and they get out of there. And the one question that I did notice that was kind of weird was Vision straight up refers to Pietro as, oh, well, what's up with that imposter Pietro? So, something's going on. I'm so, obsessed with, I want to know what they're going to do with Pietro, because whatever they do, it could mean a world of different, a literal universe, multiple universes of a difference in the MCU. But right now they're throwing us all over the place, man. I know what they're doing, it's working, but doesn't mean I have to like it. But anyway, we see that the house is just going completely bonkers, man. Everything is trying to change back, and it's at this point it's not even just things like the TV or, like a coffee table or something like that. At this point, there's wallpaper rolling all the way up the walls. The structures are completely changing. The stairs are changing. Everything is trying to go back to the way it was. And one crazy thing that I noticed is, so with everything reverting back, it's props reverting back to what they were. So, I mean, like, this would revert back to, one with like a roll pad or, the little ball inside of it, whatever it is. And then, like, it's things like that. But the one thing that actually just kind of pops up out of nowhere and wasn't anything that reverted back or anything when all this chaos is happening, is that stork. And I told you, I think there's something going on with that stork. I don't think it's just some normal ass stork. There's no way that it would be, and it could just flap her magic off. But anyway, so Wanda confirms, that she's worried because she can't fix this. She doesn't know what's going on. And the interviewer is actually like, oh, well, do you feel like you deserve this? And Wanda straight up is just like, wait, you're not supposed to talk. But then we get one of the most blatant and I think the final advertisement, and it's for depression medication. And the whole thing, it sounds like grief counseling. It's talking about, oh, does it feel like the world, is moving on without you, and blah, 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 blah. And it's talking about, changing reality and stepping into your own reality, the way you write it, the way you want it to be. So, I mean, immediately, if we're going to the Infinity Stone theory, that kind of, totally destroys everything I said, everything that I was thinking. I mean, because, wouldn't that blatantly be the Reality Stone? I mean, it was the whole theme of the ad was red. It says reality like 3-4 times. It seems pretty obvious, but I don't know if there's a hidden thing in there that I missed or something that could be, hinting at it being the soul or the Power Stone or something like that. Let me know, because that's the only thing I caught. And maybe the paper towels were different, or I don't know. But at this point, I have no idea. So definitely let me know in the comments. I'd really like to hear your guys' theory on where the whole Infinity Stone theory is, if you think it is just complete nonsense or what. So after the ad, we get a part where, we see Billy and Tommy, they're at Agnes's house, and Billy says, he likes it there. He enjoys it. And the reason he says it is real creepy, because he says, oh, I like it here because it's quiet. You're quiet. You're quiet on the inside, Agnes. And again, it's kind of foreshadowing what we're about to find out about Agnes and, what's going on in Westview. But before any of that, we get a part where Agnes is actually talking to the camera, and I just now thought about that, but that's real weird. We'll talk about it later, but it's very odd. But she mentions Ralph again, and he's nowhere to be found. He's not in the house. He's not seen during this entire scene. So again, it begs the question, like, who is Ralph? Is Ralph like code for Mephisto or something? Like, Ralph has to be whoever she's working for or with. But she straight up says that Wanda is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and so it shows that, Wanda is definitely losing her grip on this reality. Then this next scene, okay, finally, I definitely gotta say I called it right at the beginning of the episode, when they showed the recap. When the first thing that they showed was, Monica talking about, oh, she's been through the barrier a few times. I was like, man, okay, so we're gonna see her powers in this episode. We're gonna see her, finally use them. And with this scene, well, first she, puts on this spacesuit. It looks like a spacesuit from, the Fantastic Four movies or something. It looks like something they would wear when, they get their powers. So I'm really curious. I think they're leading up to. There's been theories out there that I've been kind of looking at that. I try to stay away from everybody's theories and everything to make my own theories and make everything that I say my own words. But I did see a couple things out there that people are starting to think the astrophysicist that she was mentioning could be Reed Richards. And It's a very good possibility that could be our major cameo. I think we could get not only Reed Richards, but Magneto. And, I mean, even one of those would be insane. But could you imagine if we get both? Woo-hoo! But anyway, so this is where we see that the rover just pretty much doesn't do anything. It ends up being a piece of trash. I mean, it hits the border and it's supposed to let her sail straight through without, any problem. It just, hits it, drives up on it, starts to get rewritten, and then like half of it gets rewritten and it gets chunked out. And so it's like half an old school truck and half the modern, everything that was on the back of the rover. But Monica sees this and she's like, well, that can't get through, but I mean, I can. And they're like, no, don't do it. And she's like, screw it. She just runs through, digs in, and then she pushes herself through, and it's right here that Photon is born, baby. We finally see her, those blue eyes click in, and it's a super awesome scene. I want to mention here that I absolutely adore the effects in this show. Like, they are so sick. The fact that some of them, like when you see Vision stepping out of the border and he's getting pulled back and everything, and whenever the artifacts are changing in her house in this episode, it looks so awesome. And when Photon is becoming Photon, it's such an amazing scene. The effects in this show just they're so badass. I know I've said a couple things that I've had a couple of nitpicks here and there, but overall, like when it's gotten more to the modern side of things, I'm really digging it. Then there's a quick small scene where we see that Vision, he thinks that Wanda is putting all of this stuff in his and Darcy's way, so he can't get back home and see what's going on. But I'm pretty sure that Wanda has nothing to do with blocking him from getting there, especially considering the fact that Wanda created this whole world for them. She expanded the borders to keep him alive. You'd think she'd want to spend as much time with him as possible. I know the whole point of this episode was she wanted time alone from him, or by herself, but I don't think she wanted time alone from him, actually. More so time to not worry about the kids. I think she wanted to just kind of de-stress. But we'll see. It could have been her, but I think it has a little more to do with who we find out is behind some stuff here in a bit. Especially because we see that Wanda's just chilling at home. She's trying to make herself some food and just kick it and watch TV. And then Monica just straight up burst into her house, and Wanda's pissed. I mean, reasonably. Even if it wasn't Monica Rambeau, you'd imagine if somebody just kind of burst into your house, be pretty mad. But she, she's like, I don't want to hear anything you have to say. She lifts her up with the magic, pushes her out. She's blaming Pietro on him, blaming pretty much everything on Monica and on Sword. And she's like, hey, look, whoa, Pietro, we had nothing to do with that. Wanda's not hearing it. She's just like, whatever. She's basically, looks like she's about to basically take Monica out, but Monica's like, well, go ahead, do it then, take me out. And we see Wanda kind of back off just a little, and she's like, that's where you and Hayward are different. Hayward's trying to take out this whole place. He doesn't care who gets hurt, he just wants what he wants. Don't let him make you a villain. Then Wanda, she's like, well, what if I already am? And then we see that, Agnes, she's been watching this whole thing and she's a little displeased. And so she steps outside, she kind of splits them up, Basically, it looks like she's kind of, holding Wanda back. And she brings Wanda into her house, tries to kind of, let her blow off some steam. And definitely get her away from Monica at all costs. So then again, we cut back to Vision and he realizes, what am I doing here? Why am I, talking to you guys? This is foolish. And he realizes he can fly and he can just, phase through things and get out of here. And the whole time when, he's getting blocked by all these things, that's all I could think was, why isn't he just flying away and leaving and going home? Why is he sitting here and waiting as if, he's bound to this truck? And so that was just a pretty satisfying moment for me when he finally was like, oh my god, this is absurd. I was like, yes, thank you. But then we get to the big bombshell of the episode. So Wanda is at Agnes's house. She's sitting there, she's wondering, hey, where are the twins? What happened to them? And it kind of, seems to hint at the fact that, maybe Agnes turned them into the rabbit and this, like, locust on the blinds. I'm not 100% sure if that's, what it was trying to say, but that's what I was getting from it. But either way, it's like, where is she keeping them? If that isn't what she did with them, where are they? Because she says that they're in the basement, but that ends up being a load of bullcrap because Wanda finds like crazy, creepy hideout, with skulls and, bones, all sorts of stuff, and what looks like, a book almost kind of from, Doctor Strange or something from the library. It is definitely some sort of spell book. And so, you kind of start to realize, oh, well, this is definitely a witch's den. And that's when Agnes, of course, reveals herself to be Agatha Harkness. So I was right. She was definitely putting on an act in the last episode. She has been pulling the strings, messing with stuff all along. But she doesn't say that she's, been behind everything. She just says that she's been messing with everything all along. In this, kind of crazy intro bit that we get, that it is kind of themed like, it kind of seems like a Munsters intro. Okay, so I don't know how I forgot to mention this while I was actually filming, but after the reveal that Agnes is actually Agatha Harkness, it doesn't really make much sense that she was talking to the camera later, because it shows her in her little intro bit as the interviewer behind the camera, talking to Wanda and, Vision throughout the episode. So it just seems kind of off, that she's the one who was having a little interview bit. That's all. But again, I don't think that, she's fully behind everything. I think it's just trying to tell us that, she's been the one who's kind of been, basically micromanaging this whole thing for whoever is really behind it. Which has got to be our boy Mephisto, man. I mean, I saw some things that said it could be Nightmare, but I really don't think it. I think it's got to be Mephisto, man. It's got to be. But we're not going to know until next week or the week after, because that's the end of this episode. I hated it. I hated it so much, man. Man. We get this little intro, and I'm like, oh, cool, we're about to see Agnes do some crazy stuff, and then boom, it goes to that please stand by screen. Like, with every episode before this, I've been fine with it. I've been like, oh, that was a good episode. I can't wait till next week. But with this one, I'm like, why? It's not that I didn't like it. It was still a good ending, of course. Obviously, I still can't wait to see next week's, but I'm angry. What happens? You can't keep me waiting like this. But while I was sitting there, being all angry and pouty at the whole thing, there was actually a post-credit scene. So we get the first one in the show. First post-credit scene of Phase 4. And I'd say it didn't disappoint. I mean, it was pretty good little tease. Monica found her way into the witch's den, and you can tell that it's right when Agatha has just revealed herself to Wanda, and because there's that purple glow all over the place, and you see that Monica gets that purple glow in her eyes too. So it makes me wonder, is Monica seeing that as well, or is she just kind of just starting to sink into that kind of magic aura? But we don't get time to find out because Quicksilver pops up. I didn't even notice that he wasn't in the entire episode until this moment. And he says, oh, Snooper's gonna snoop. And so it makes me wonder, is he actually working for Agatha, or is he, kind of being controlled? And, it just makes me wonder, is he willing, or is he a manifestation? You know, what is, again, I can't get over this. I've got to know what is up with Quicksilver in this freaking show. But guys, that's the end. I mean, again, I can't wait till next week's episode. We're going to have so much to talk about over the next couple weeks. I can't wait. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're notified of all my upcoming videos, and specifically, you know, the next couple, because you're not going to want to miss them. I'm not going to want to miss this show. I mean, it's getting too crazy to miss out on. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like at the bottom. It definitely helps out the channel. Don't forget to share this with somebody you know, or somebody who's, you know, into Marvel movies. I think that, you know, I'd really like to see some theories and, you know, some conversation going on in the comments. Let's get some dialogue rolling. And speaking of, let me know what you guys think. I want to know what y'all's theories are on the show. I want to know what y'all are thinking of the show so far, how y'all are liking it. I mean, there's no denying it. The show is good. Everybody's, you know, seeming to like it. So, you know, what are y'all enjoying about it? What aren't y'all enjoying about it? But that's going to do it for this week. So, of course, I really appreciate you guys watching, and I hope you guys have a spectacular day.